mean, look at the Philadelphia Eagles. And they pay their quarterback. The Niners don't. Jalen Hurts makes $255 million. A.J. Brown, 3 of their offensive linemen eat. Dallas Goedert, Bryce Huff, Darius Slay, Saquon Barkley. They pay a running back a fortune. And they're fine. They're not having to move pieces at the trade deadline. They are active, usually at trade deadline. They're active in the offseason. Not the Cowboys. Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah. So I love that Colin highlighted this, because this really just goes to show you the difference between a well-run franchise and a poorly run franchise. Because you can see the names, you can see the contracts and all of that. And you can see why a team like the Eagles, why it's so important to lock down a great GM and an owner who knows his role in being an owner and also knows the role of the people that he hires to do the job that they know how to do, right? Why you actually hired them. And it's honestly what makes a team like the Philadelphia Eagles so consistently competitive. And it's why I don't know why other teams or other fan bases don't go crazy when they see their teams have these issues. Look how the Eagles were able to afford Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, and Devontae. Look how they were able to make that work. And yet you look at the Cincinnati Bengals and they can't figure out how to keep Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, and T. Higgins together and their running back. Like, how are they unable to do those things? One is poorly run. The other is one of the best run teams in the NFL. And it's funny because anytime I make a statement like that about the Philadelphia Eagles, people, I guess obviously non-Philadelphia Eagles fans, they lose their mind. They're just like, oh, how many Super Bowls do they have? How many Super Bowls do they have? And it's like, okay, like that's not how this all works here, okay? And also, again, you realize the vast majority of teams winning Super Bowls happened over 30 years ago, especially a lot of these other random fan bases. And so when you look at what the Eagles have been able to consistently build, they don't have these same issues. And again, neither do the Kansas City Chiefs. The 49ers had it a little bit with Ayuk, and which is what surprised me about them kind of having that issue with Ayuk. And then obviously right now it's not going too well for them, but they are also a very highly run franchise. And that was actually the basis of this segment, as you can see at the bottom, where it was kind of using the 49ers as a jumping off point and pretty much ripping what the Dallas Cowboys are doing. And that's because Jerry Jones doesn't understand his expertise. He has been great at drafting players. I think that's a very fair assessment of what he's been able to do. But outside of that, right, how was he not able to afford Saquon Barkley? How was he not able to get Derrick Henry? You think that team wouldn't be significantly better if he got those guys? I mean, of course they would. And the reality is that you have a team like the Philadelphia Eagles where players desperately want to play there. And if they realize that they can't re-sign there or whatever, they're upset. They're angry. We saw that with C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Right? That's what we saw. So we know that that's a thing. It's just, that's what happens when you build a culture of a place that players want to be at. It becomes contagious. It does become very family based. And I'm such a huge proponent of building that. And so when you see this, it's just awesome. Because remember, even Tyreek Hill, when he went to Miami, he got a huge mega payday. And then when he saw a bunch of other receivers getting paid, he's like, well, I want more money now. Right? And it just continues that cycle of just making things messier and messier and messier. And you just don't have that with teams like Philadelphia, Kansas City. Kansas City had that with Tyreek Hill. And they're like, okay, fine. See ya. If you don't realize that you're in an amazing situation with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, I don't know what to tell you, bud. If you want the maximum amount of money that you can get, by all means, free country, go out and get it. But best of luck winning and getting your numbers. Best of luck. We're still going to win. We're still going to have, build our legacy, build our dynasty with or without you. And he didn't buy into that. And now he's, I mean, what are the Miami Dolphins doing with him right now? How many playoff games has he won since he's left the Kansas City Chiefs, let alone Super Bowls? Like, it's a real thing that happens. And the Philadelphia Eagles just always quietly take care of it. Did you hear of any contract dispute with Jalen Hurts? How about A.J. Brown? How about Devontae? Dickerson, Johnson, Mailata? None of them. None of them. I mean, and it's so funny because when Saquon Barkley was first signed, you had a lot of people. It was 50-50. There was definitely some people that were like, this is great, this is great. But you also had a lot of people say, this is crazy. Look what the Eagles just did. They overpaid for a running back. This will be a disaster for them. Saquon Barkley is overrated. He only had one good year. There's a reason why the Giants wanted to let go of him. And I was like thinking to myself, wait a second. We're going to use how the Giants conduct business, their ownership and GM. We're going to use that as a reference point as what should or shouldn't be done. Because the Giants didn't necessarily want him and want to, build a team around him. We're going to use that as an indicator as to why Saquon Barkley may not be worth it. We're going to use what the Giants have done. Like, that's what we're going to use as an indicator. Rather than Howie Roseman's genius and his ability to literally build two completely different Super Bowl teams with two completely different teams and coaches and quarterbacks, which is literally unheard of within a 7-year window of each other, or less than that, 5-year window. We're going to use the New York Giants as a reference point. Like, it's kind of bonkers to me. It really is. And it's not to say that the Eagles only make great decisions. Obviously, they're going to have some bad, make some bad moves like every single team. But it should put other teams, another fan base, if you're watching this video and you're not a Philadelphia Eagles fan, like, it should frustrate you if your team is unable to make some of these moves. Like, this is where you should be holding your team's feet to the fire. And I always say this about Dallas Cowboys fans or even Ravens fans to a degree, Bengals fans. Like, what are you doing? Like, you need to demand that your team is run better, because if it's not run better, you're not going to win. Yeah, you might occasionally get some great players. You may occasionally be able to put together a great team and go on a run, but it won't be consistent. There is a reason why the Philadelphia Eagles, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Baltimore Ravens, the 49ers are consistently competing. They are consistently in the running for a conference championship game or a Super Bowl. Consistently. I mean, and it's no mistake that they're all the top teams for the last 25 plus years of just playoff wins alone. Right now it goes still the Patriots, I believe, because they're just hanging on to their glory days with Tom Brady. The Ravens, then the Eagles. And then I believe Chiefs now, and then 49ers, but I'm not sure because obviously it gets updated every year. But I definitely know that that's the top three. And the Patriots are so far ahead for the last 25 years, but I'm sure as this moving since 2000, eventually they'll drop off. So it's just one of those things where we have to stop using this binary, did you win a Super Bowl or not? If you win a Super Bowl, success. If you don't win a Super Bowl, failure. Because that's a conversation that I had with someone about the Dallas Cowboys, where they were like, it's all about Super Bowls. I don't care about NFC championship games or anything like that. Those are consolation prizes. And it's like, but you haven't even been to an NFC championship game in the last 30 years. And you want to tell me that you think the Dallas Cowboys are very well run? That's an incompatible statement. It does not make sense. And this is the one thing that I always say all the time, and it's one of my most repeated things that I say. Again, the Eagles in the last since Dak Prescott has been drafted to the Dallas Cowboys, the Eagles have the same number of Super Bowl appearances as Dak has playoff wins. Do you understand how insane of a statement that is to be able to make about a division rival? And you want to tell me that there's not a fundamental issue to say the Dallas Cowboys, and not that the fact, and also on the other side to be like, look what the Philadelphia Eagles have been able to do? It's remarkable. It really is. So when you look at those names, you look at those contracts, and you see how they're able to put this all together and not have any of these issues that you see some of these other teams. If you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan, you should definitely have nothing but insane gratitude. Because I know majority of fans don't watch other teams. They're not up to date with contract disputes of other teams and all of that. I get that. I'm not going to act like I know exactly what's going on in Jacksonville. And I watch all this stuff and try to be in touch with all the teams. But it's, you can only do so much. But I'll tell you what, it's pretty cold and rough in other areas around the league. I mean, it just is. It's an absolute mess. And quite frankly, more than 50% of the teams out there. So it's like Philadelphia Eagles fans should have nothing but gratitude for how Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman conduct business and the culture that they've been able to build. And that a lot of it has to do with some of the real OG vets, right? Like Lane Johnson, Brandon Graham, all that. They were able to really establish a culture that was then able to endure bringing in some questionable players, some big personalities, having other players now were also part of that culture retire and move on, and then now incorporate new players and now have them now be part of that culture. So when Lane Johnson does retire, when Jason Kelsey does retire, it's the passing of the torch. I mean, that's what it becomes. So then that culture now really gets integrated and is sustainable within the franchise. Now it's about the Eagles and not necessarily about the team or about the individual players, excuse me. Which is why I said, hey, I'm not too, because everyone kept saying, Jason Kelsey, he's leaving. They're going to lose all their leadership. They didn't skip a beat. Because one, Jason Kelsey's still around because he lives and breathes for the Eagles, because that's what they've created, again, that culture. And he's passed the torch on to these other people, to these other players, whether it's Hurts, whether it's Dickerson, whether it's Mailata. We could just go down all the names. That's what it is. And that's what makes also the Eagles so special, because they could bring in, right? They drafted a few players that people were like, I don't know, he could be problematic. And they were like, well, you know what? The Eagles have the culture and the leadership to be able to endure that. If it is a problem, it won't infect the team. Not to mention, there's a great likelihood that they'll be able to change that person who maybe is problematic, whatever it may be. I won't name any specific names. That they'll be able to get into the fold and kind of redeemed, so to speak. And compare that what's going on with Dallas and Micah. It's like it's a mess. And the reality is that the Eagles are so established, I really believe that they can bring in Micah to that locker room. I really do. And in the moment that it wasn't, and then it gets rough, they got him out. They get him out. I mean, heck, they did it like a very long time ago with T.O. They were able to bring him in. They knew he was problematic. They had the culture set up. They had the team, the coach, the everything. They got to the Super Bowl. Obviously didn't win. When things got bad, they said, all right, goodbye. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting to see the Eagles continue to be at such a high level. But it still does seem to me, outside of Colin Cowherd, the Philadelphia Eagles definitely don't get a ton of it. Colin Gibbs, that's why it's always weird to me when anyone says people will randomly in the comment section be like, Colin's such a Eagles hater or whatever. And I'm like, Colin is arguably the most the most national voice who's pro Philadelphia Eagles. And I don't think he's just pro for the sake of it. Like it's his honest assessment of it. And it's always interesting to see other fan bases, because obviously all fan bases are going to like their own team and call out other teams. But I think other fan bases can respect other fan bases, or other teams, I should say, right? There's a respect of what the Lions are doing, the Ravens, the Chiefs, whatever it may be. I do not see a lot of other fan bases, because again, I interact with all different fan bases on here. I do not see a lot of other fan bases saying, hey, the Philadelphia Eagles, I respect that franchise, or I respect what they're doing, what they're building. It's a lot of, honestly, like a lot of pulling them down more than anything, which I do find interesting. Maybe it's a lot of Dallas Cowboys fans or something, like, I don't know, maybe, but it is something that stands out to me more than anything in terms of how other fan bases view other teams. That's always interesting to me to see. How does a 49ers fan feel about Jalen Hurts, Jared Goff. Like, to me, that's so interesting because it's just like, what information are you being fed? What is your perception of them? Like, do you think, if you're an Eagles fan, do you respect what the 49ers have been able to do? Or do you look at them and say, they're a trash organization, they don't have a good quarterback, Purdy's awful, Shanahan can't manage it, right? Like, I just, like, it's always interesting to me. It's always interesting to me. So I really want to hear your views, both from Philadelphia Eagles fans, of course, but then also non-Eagles fans. Like, where do you view the Eagles in terms of how well run they are, right? Like, what they've been able to accomplish and who they are as a franchise. Where is their standing in the bigger picture of the NFL as a whole? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.